This is Blaine.
And this is Be Radicast.
And we are the Horticold. Today is number 13. Lucky number 13.
Yep.
And we're going to talk a little bit about composting. The differences of composting. Yeah, the different levels, how deep you want to get. So the compost that I had down, green waste compost that you get at a...
Green waste.
People.
Yeah,
There's one... usually there's one at every
city.
Garbage dump, yeah.
Yeah. They
have a green waste bin, and they compost their own stuff. You can go get that compost. There's some places that will have green waste for you. You can look them up. They're just little businesses, and you buy it by the yard, or it's either the half a yard or the yard, a cubic yard.
So typically the idea, I guess, that the city wants to do is they want to take their city. So for example, Springville City accepts all branches and leaves and needles and debris that people rake up in their yards and whatever. And landscape businesses decide to dump their green waste in one location. And then throughout the year, there's a process where it gets tumbled and turned and churned and baked. It gets really, really hot inside and breaks down. So all of that plant material breaks down into kind of a very fine, small fibers. And then the city will then sell that by yard, like you said, or half yard, to anybody, but typically it's to help the city renew their soils from what came from old crappy plant material or dead plant material. So it's a good program. It's a great program.
So that would be green waste compost. So there's nothing but green waste in that.
As far as
I know.
It's supposed to be, yeah.
Yeah. So there's no food, there's no anything. It's just straight up green waste. So the other one I was thinking about was bio-waste compost. Now, this is a little bit different because it's where sewage plant, it's a way for the city, again, to use what they have and kind of get rid of sewage. So they mix it with the green waste and make this bio waste.
Is there an advantage to bio waste?
It's really nutrient rich. The negative would be you got to be careful because you don't want to use it in your veggie garden. That was the recommended that I've heard.
Okay.
That you don't want to use it for your veggie gardens because you don't want, especially things that are in the ground, in touching the soil, like potatoes or radishes or carrots, because it's really hard to get those entirely clean. And they say it's perfectly safe, though. I'm not going to bash on them but pathogens can happen. Pathogens happen.
Dude, that's great. But so here's the thing, though, is I've heard that, the big compost piles get hot enough inside that it literally just breaks down and kills and bakes it. Yeah, bakes it to a safe level.
Right. I just ethically,
okay, yeah,
me
yeah, totally.
Personally,
cool.
But also with normal compost, if you have a compost pile, I've heard that you don't want to put your weeds in there because then you spread. But it's the same thing. If you can get it hot enough, it will kill those weeds.
Yeah.
Well, you keep talking, and I'll look it up and see if I can find it.
So yeah, here's the other thing too about bio waste is that it just came to mind is that you could end up with higher levels of I've heard higher levels of mercury, micronutrients, toxicities to your vegetable garden. So not just the E. coli factor, but possibly just higher levels of micronutrients that plants can be sensitive to. manganese, mercury, the metals. I think any of the metals in too high of a quantity would be overkill. However, I have heard a study recently that simply just peeing in a, like, say, around your plant in kind of a tree ring with a little raised berm, so that it's not, hitting the roots directly or anything, but it percolates down through, is a great fertilizer, and that plants can grow immeasurably much, much more, simply by urinating on your plants. I mean, it sounds crazy, but there are a lot of it's a nitric acid, and aka nitrogen as it breaks down. So
Okay, so I found something to help you with this. So this comes from Texas A&M Agriculture Life Extension Office. I could have looked up ours, but this is the first one that came up. So it depends on the seed. So it depends on what weed you're dealing with. If you can get it to 140 degrees in the compost pile, it will take care of... Okay, so number of hours required to kill 90% of the seeds. If you get it that hot, it's like... The longest one is 3 hours.
Oh, easy money.
So,
yeah, easy.
But if you can only get it to 108 degrees, it says 46 for some barnyard grass. It's unaffected at 108. So even it just doesn't matter. And then the common purslane is unaffected at 108 degrees, no matter how long it stays in there. The tumble pigweed. I don't even think we have that here, but whatever. This is from Texas A&M. Do we have
pigweed? But
I don't know if it's that one. Yeah. But so the hotter you get it, the more weeds you're going to kill, the quicker you're going to kill it. But it really just depends on what you're dealing with.
Yeah.
But if you get up to 140 degrees, that's pretty freaking hot.
90% is good, but man, if you got up to 180, you'd be solid.
So that's just your rough figure there. So if you can get it around 120, it looks like it kills everything too. It just takes a long time.
Yeah. Good luck on finding a thermometer that long.
Yeah, no kidding. So I mean, it's like, how do you tell? I don't know, freak. But it's yeah, this is more for farmers, So it's for us that we deal with. It probably is a good idea just to keep the weeds separated.
Yeah, or just simply throw them out. I mean, that's man, you hate to do that because there's some good advantages to keeping a hold of that.
Right.
But jumping forward beyond bio sludge or bio
waste.
Waste.
Bio waste compost.
Yeah.
Has a nice ring to it.
Oh, totally nice ring. So as you jump forward beyond that, what's your experiences with composting? I mean,
really, it's just my experience is not super advanced. Like, I have my own little compost pile. I know
currently you do.
Currently I do. So how you do your own is you want to do layers. So I know there's two different kinds of composting. One is aerobic and the other is anaerobic. So you're talking about air and not air. So that is the whole turning idea where you have to turn your compost or whatever. So it's just way more effective to do the aerobic. The one with air. Whatever the one is with air, that's the one you want.
Oh, yeah.
But it was still compost. It's just more of kind of a different bacterium, whatever.
The
bacteriae salobis that will do the work. So there's ones that need air to do it, and there's ones that don't need air to do it. It's just if you want it more effective, you need the ones that need the air. So it's the rotating of it. But how you do a wet layer and a dry layer, a wet layer and a dry layer, a wet layer.
So you can't just keep turning it if it's all dry, right?
Right.
Yeah.
It doesn't, nothing's happening. Yeah. So it's like, it's good to have three different sections. So you have a dry section, a wet section, and then you have one in the middle. That is the layering that you would layer them. And that's where you would, so you put food, anything that has any sort of wetness to it, lettuce, food waste, The stuff that would go in the dry would be like dry leaves. You could use newspaper, any kind of wood product. Well, you don't want to get too thick. So like you don't want to deal with cardboard. That's too thick.
No,
it's not gonna work. And then you can get into vermiculture, where you actually use worms. You mentioned a little bit in the last podcast about using worms to create
the castings.
Thank you.
Yeah.
To help enrich those soils. So yeah, that's you just do those and you can add some stuff.
Do you have to be sensitive to temperatures as far as the worm situation? I mean, you can't have those worms outside in the middle of the winter, right? I mean,
I'm winter composting. I don't know how to do it.
Yeah.
I just have a bunch of stuff out there right now, but I won't know what I have until I get the snow off and flip it around and see. I might have to add more liquids.
So in a way that actually works out as far as an outside compost bin or system, in the way that if you have, intermittent raining, days on, days off with rain, and it can get your leaves wet and everything, that'll actually help promote that breakdown.
And see, all I have are pallets. So I have pallets up that separate my bins. So that's all I do.
Is so the pallets, to me, seems like that the advantage there is that you have open spaces on the walls of your compost bin to allow for oxygen to get into the bottom portion, especially, and so that the aerobic bacteria can continue to do their job. Whereas if you had solid walls, it seems like it would get a bit slimy and a bit gooey down in the bottom regions kind of fast.
Yeah, like I've never used one of the rolling bins, but I've heard those are very effective.
Yeah, I've used one of those. I've had one of those in the past, and so I've had three phases of composting, and that was my first phase with that big drum, the big black drum that you throw a whole bunch of green waste in, and even some scraps from inside the house, and you go out there, and it's just as easy as can be. It's on rollers. It's easy to turn. The hiccup that I had with that one is that it was not in either an enclosed area, or there was not like a roof canopy over the top of it. And so as we went through the winter time, because it was outside, water came into the joints of that, and expansion happened with the freezing, and all of the parts, those movable parts, became totally just trashed. Like they ripped apart. So that was my bad, and I wasn't about to spend the money to do that again. So that was my first phase of composting. So if you do have one of those, or you are going to get one of those, and you live in an area where it does rain and freeze and snow and whatnot, think about an overhang or an area, carport, garage, whatever, that you can use to help save your investment. And that was the first phase. The second was pallets, kind of pallet bins, a lot like what you are doing now, and that worked out great. But what I found over time is that I was really stoked about it in the beginning, and then just over time, I just didn't turn it as often as I should have. Well, I go out there after, a year's time, and I end up with this awesome soil broken down underneath, this organic material underneath, and the top hadn't changed at all. There was still sticks and leaves and whatever else on the top. So you do have to think about, if you want to do composting, you have to think about spending a little bit of time on it and churning it and turning it. It's super important. If you don't, the other thing is that I got lucky with that lower level that broke down on its own. But if it does go anaerobic, then you get a smell with that. And that smell can be pretty rancid and pretty rank. And if you have close neighbors, they'll let